I'm going to start with this thing here, which you haven't got. It's a thing I've made over the years for the students to give a guide to all the kind of invertebrates you typically see in a river. So the top guys, these are all stoneflies, members of the insect order Plecoptera. And there's 5 families, there's many more genera, and there are many more species. But that's a sort of a rough guide to all the families. And there's 5 families of mayfly, the ephemeroptera. You know, mayflies, I haven't heard of stoneflies. But over the page then I've got all the different larvae you'd see of the caddisflies. And caddisflies, very similar to moths, they're effectively underwater moths. Lots and lots of different families of caddisfly. You turn over the page, lots of different types of beetle. Going over, lots of different types of bug down here, and odonata, or the dragonflies and the damselflies. And over here, a bewildering array of crustaceans, fly larvae. You've got a big crayfish there, lots of little microcrustaceans, lots of different types of larvae. And over the side here, quite a few different types of mollusks, worms and leeches. All right, so I could say, go away and do that. Well, you go, what? I can't possibly learn all that in a day or a week. And it's very, very difficult. This is actually far too complex. It's just, you know, you're not going to learn this. I know it because I've been doing it for years. But this is just too complex to learn. Almost all biomonitoring is based on knowing all these different families, which is going to discourage citizens from ever getting involved. It's just too complex. So I've said, well, I'm going to throw that away. It's useless. But what we do recognise is from this page, okay, so there are several of those species, families, that are very, very indicative of water. And the first one is the stonefly, the order. What distinguishes them, when you've got decent eyesight, is they've all got 2 tails sticking out the end. Now these are nymphs, or larvae. Nymphs is the correct term, and they live underwater. The adults, you'll see them in spring and summer, flying around. Well, not flying around, sort of flying from tree to tree. They don't swarm, they kind of rest. But that's what they are, as larvae, and they've all got 2 tails. Irrespective of what family it is, they're all good water indicators. You don't get stoneflies in polluted waters very much at all right? So no matter what kind of stonefly, it's a good indicator. The next one is a very good indicator. It's the flattened mayfly. Right, they come in all kinds of shapes and sizes, but these guys, the flattened mayflies, are again indicative of good water quality. Once you get to recognise them, they're very easy to see. Sometimes they can be very small, sometimes large, but there they are. The third one I've got here is the green caddisfly. The name, and I often refer to it because I get used to it, is called Rhyacophylidae. But never mind about that, it's a green caddisfly. It's a larva. And it's not only green, it's got kind of a spiky abdomen, and there its gills coming down the edge. It moves in a certain strange way. So it's very, once you learn to spot them, they're very sort of indicative. Those are the good guys, or rather they indicate good water. Down here we have what's called the bad guys. Now they're not in themselves bad at all, they just indicate there's a problem. The first is a leech. Looks a little bit superficially like a worm, but when you see them, they've got suckers at the front end, suckers at the back, and they cling onto a tray. So if you're trying to dislodge it, it'll be sticking on, whereas a worm won't do that. So a leech is a leech. These don't suck blood, by the way, they eat invertebrates, so there's no problem there. You've got the leech. Snails, and there's lots of different types of snail, but what snails feed on is either organic matter on the surface or algae. They need algal-rich food. So if there's a bit of nutrients going in the river, there's a bit of algae, you'll often get snails. And the more algae you get, the more organic matter, the more snails you'll have. So snails are kind of an indicative of enriched conditions, which is not desirable. Over here, the last one is the water louse, which is a kind of an underwater woodlouse. You're familiar with the woodlouse? You look under a stone and there'll be the woodlouse, a fat pig sometimes they're called. That's the underwater version of it. It's a crustacean, an isopod crustacean. And experience, I'm sure Karen you'd agree, you tend to find them where you get a lot of sewage pollution. They seem to be an indicator of sewage pollution. And they're really undesirable. If you see these in a stream, that's very undesirable. So you've got the 3 bad guys and the 3 good guys. That's all you need. All the rest, and I've got a few sort of individuals pictures down below. These are found everywhere. The shrimp is found everywhere. There's a swimming mayfly that's found everywhere. The black fly larva and these caddisflies. They don't really indicate anything other than perhaps differences in habitat or flow, not in terms of water quality. So almost all of these things aren't really indicative of water quality, all right? But these guys are, as far as you can tell. So over the page, it's a very simple scheme we've got. It is simple. It's probably less good than the more complex ones, but it's accessible and at least it works. All you do, and I'll show you what to do, you take a kick sample, and I'll demonstrate that, for 30 seconds. Quite brief. Have you got one of these? Yes or no? Doesn't matter how many, have you got them? If you've got a good guy, you mark it down as a +1. If it's a bad guy, it's a -1. So it goes from +3 to -3. And you mark the total down there. So if you've got 2 +1s and 1 -1, it's a +1. So you have to be able to add and subtract up to 3. And you do it 3 times. So you have 3 numbers. So imagine, if you will, you've got a very good stream that's always got a stonefly, a flattened mayfly, and a green caddisfly, and all the samples, +3, +3, +3, gives you +9. Whereas if you had a filthy, horrible stream, had none of these guys, but always had snails and leeches and the water lice, -3, -3, -3, you get a -9. So you can go from -9 to +9. The more you are plus, the better you are. And what we've kind of a little bit arbitrarily decided is if the score is from +5 to +9, that's good. If it's from -4 to +4, it's moderate. And if it's -5 to -9, it's poor. Now these are very simplistic terms, but you get the idea. And you can be on the good side of moderate or the poor side of moderate and this kind of thing. But it gives you a number, and if you start to do it on lots of different places, you can see, do these numbers change? Do they get better? Do they get worse? Within a stream and between streams. And I should tell you where you've got good water, moderate and poor. It'll find the black spots, if you like. That's all there is to it. What's a good idea for citizens is to take a photograph of these scoring taxa. Not all the animals, just the ones, the 6 here, the 3 good and the 3 bad. If you pick up one individual, perhaps in a plastic teaspoon, put it in a white vessel like this, and this is the cut-off bit of a little yogurt pot, take a photograph with your mobile phone, and you can upload that with your data, and that tells us, look at it, yes, so they've got what they've said they've got. So it's always good to have a little photographic record.